Good morning, colleagues. Hope you had a nice President's Day. I want to call this meeting to order of the Committee on Finance. The time is 10:07 on Tuesday, February 17, 2020. Each of you should have in front of you the minutes per Rule 45 of the November meeting, and if anyone has any changes or questions, we can take them right now on that document. Okay, I have a motion for approval from Alderman Hairston. All in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion carries for the approval of the Rule 45 report. Item number 2 is a re-referral of the ordinance, plastics ordinance, to Committee on Health and Human Relations, and it will be held at this time. Item number 3 is a TIF agreement, intergovernmental agreement with the Chicago Park District to provide tax increment financing assistance for Williams Park. This is in the 3rd Ward, Alderman Dowell, Bronzeville redevelopment area. And I believe there's a packet of information for each one of you regarding this Williams Park TIF agreement. The percentage of the TIF that is in Alderman Dowell's ward is 60%. Alderman King has 40%. We'll have Nelson Chung and Beth O'Reilly both come up and speak to this. The ordinance would authorize the Department of Planning and Development to enter into an IGA with the Chicago Park District for the reimbursement of construction costs associated with the new field house at Williams Park in the 3rd Ward. This would authorize up to $3 million in TIF funds to reimburse a portion of the construction costs. The total construction cost was $9,509,157. That's $9,509,157. And the breakdown of the cost is CHA at $6 million, Chicago Park District $509,157, and the Bronzeville TIF $3 million. Alderman Dowell is supporting the project, and I'll have her speak at the end. But we'll start out with Nelson Chung to discuss the TIF expenditure.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nelson Chung, Department of Planning and Development. The proposed ordinance authorizes the Department of Planning to enter into an intergovernmental agreement to provide $3 million from the Bronzeville TIF to the Chicago Park District for improvements to Williams Park. Williams Park is a Chicago Park District park located at 2820 South State Street within the Douglas community area. The 8-acre park is situated between the Chicago Public Schools Drake Elementary School and the Chicago Housing Authority Dearborn Homes. The Chicago Park District partnered with CHA to construct a new 11,200 square foot field house at Williams Park. The field house includes a half-court gymnasium, multi-purpose club rooms, for art, education, performance, meetings, and exercise rooms. CHA contributed $6 million for the project as it benefits the adjacent Dearborn homes. Chicago Park District retained the Public Building Commission to oversee the project. The result of higher than expected construction bids and PBC project administration and construction oversight escalated the total cost of the project to $9.5 million. The requested $3 million TIF fills the gap and allows for the project to be constructed. The field house was completed and opened to the public in September of 2019, and this ordinance provides for the reimbursement of $3 million to the Park District in support of the project. The field house was designed by STL Architects and features a distinctive exterior cladding of interlocking iridescent reflective metal panels. The resulting design creates a safe and inspirational environment for the more than 600 children that live in Dearborn homes, as well as provide year-round sports and recreational program. Again, the project is located in the 3rd Ward in support of Alderman Pat Dowell. Department of Planning and Development supports this ordinance to provide $3 million from the Bronzeville TIF to the Park District. The Park District is here today in attendance to answer any questions related to the project.
Thank you, Nelson. Beth, would you like to add anything?
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
We're just grateful for the TIF. This is to fill a hole in the budget that we had as a result of Bidding conditions, when we went out, we had received higher bids than we had originally budgeted with our estimator. And again, Nelson has addressed that we did have this go out to the PBC in a package of $30 million worth of work that went to the PBC at the same time. So this was in that mix that went out in 2017.
Are there any questions from the Alderman Lopez?
Thank you, Chairman. First and foremost, I want to congratulate my colleague on this beautiful field house. I do have a question with regards to the TIF. Was this paid for solely through the Bronzeville TIF?
Oh.
Or was it funds that were?
Back in my other life, this was going to be ported from 47th and King into the Bronzeville TIF. At that time, that was how the cash flow worked. Since I've been gone, I'm not sure what the porting situation is and if that's still the original plan.
I guess I'll add here, the plan right now is that it's going to be funded from the Bronzeville TIF itself. The Bronzeville TIF has the capacity to pay for it.
Oh, so it's all in-house, non-ported TIF dollars.
I will double check, but that's how our ordinance was set up.
Okay. I believe it was last month we had this discussion briefly at this committee regarding the capital plan of the Park District and how little dollars are committed from the Park District and relies heavily on TIF dollars to do a lot of the work. I think we were discussing some air conditioning unit field house expenditure last month. Do you have a projected dollar amount that we can expect to see for the year 2020 of what will be asked of the City Council through TIF for these various projects throughout the city of Chicago, so that we can see what the long-term asks are going to be from TIF, from the Park District,
Sure.
as opposed to just the monthly surprise?
I have the plan for the year of what I'm coming in with. The mayor has announced this TIF advisory committee. They
How much of that is TIF-based for the rest of 2020?
What, our plan
Yes.
total? I can just tell you what's been approved to date, and that's 18 million will be coming through to this body in the near term.
And then
5 facilities and various playgrounds. I've got the rest of my agenda when the TIFs come up for review on what we'd like to request.
is it possible to get through the chair what the rest of your agenda is, noting that it's pending TIF
Sure.
approval?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Moore.
Thank you. Question on the TIF, just the surplus. When we surplus this year, can you guys coming up for me, how much went back to the Park District as a whole when we surplus the TIF? I mean, I'm not asking, you don't know the answer to that right
Yeah,
now.
I
Just
don't
provide it
know.
through the chair.
That would be
I just want to know,
that would be a budget office for the city question?
No.
Well, no, not to this project. I'm not,
no, it's
what-
not,
what
it's not
surplus
regarded
was-
this project.
this one is getting funded out of increments.
I
Okay, you
know
get that,
I
okay.
know that. I'm just asking, since we're talking TIF and my colleague was talking Park District funding, I'm just asking,
What Park District gets as far as the percentage back?
from the surplus, when we
from the surplus.
surplused it, not percentage, I want to know the dollar amount that they got back
Sure.
this year, all right? And this Williams Park, where's this located again? Is it part of, I know Williams School, so is William Park, that was what, next to Ickes?
Chairman Dowell, pardon me.
Yes, Alderman Moore, Williams Park is located within Dearborn Homes Development. It sits nestled between Dearborn Homes and Drake Elementary School.
And that's what I thought. And Alderman Dowell, I want to really commend you on this. That's been a long time coming. I am excited that the CHA has worked with you to do this, as Dearborn was one of those developments that remained totally public housing that we rehabbed, and as other stuff was getting done, I think you did something else over there a couple of years ago, Chairman Dowell, to improve something, and I think those residents, it's a great benefit to them. So I definitely commend you, Alderman Dowell, on making sure this get done, as we need more resources for all of our field houses throughout the city, but this is a great start as we look at doing that. So this is definitely a project that I totally support. Thank you. Thank you, I'm done.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Alderman Osterman?
Just want to commend Alderman Dowell on this initiative, and unrelated, but if through the chair, you guys can begin to get costs on the lakefront protection stuff on damage that's done, totally unrelated to this, but I think Alderman Dowell's got some lakefront as well. So I'm asking the question, not today, but at
Damages.
some point, damage that the Park District's going to have to put into fixing a bike pass,
Yeah.
other things that are safety related. If you can get it to the chair, and that's something, obviously, we're going to have ongoing conversations on, but appreciate it. And
Could go through the last storm, because
no, because today's February 18th, right? March, April,
okay,
but this,
when we get through the storm season?
yeah,
Okay.
we never get through the storm season, but say March, April. Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other questions? We'll have testimony from Mr. George Blakemore first.
Good morning. To the staff and to the citizens, very few citizens that are here, and to the elected officials, and to Ms. Leslie Harrigan right here is a public speaker now. And when the public get up to speak, you all should stop your meet and greet conversation. You should stop this nonsense. TIP money was originally for areas that was abandoned and need development. They have a park district. That's the same thing with you, Mr. Chairman. That's the same thing with you, Irvin. When the public comes up, you're supposed to stop what you're doing and listen to the public. If you're so arrogant and turn your back and turn on another conversation, that's why people do not come to these meetings. The Park District is independent with the capital fund money. You're not supposed to give the city TIF money to the Park District. These are two private entities, two private governments. You don't mix these money together. And another reason why I'm very unhappy with that mixture, when they get up and build that, they have already built it. They have already built it. And I wanted to know how many black workers was on this project, how many blacks received contracts. That's why you all want to silence Mr. Blakemore. And you not only silence me, but you silence other citizens. They do not show up. And it's a reason, because you have these meetings at your convenience at 10 in the morning where working people cannot attend them at 5 or 5:30. So a couple came in and said, where are we? I say, you in city council, they're having a finance committee meeting. And you have one public speaker. I'm not excited about mixing TIF money with the Park District. That's not your job to finance the parks. That is not, they have a park capital fund, they have a park board. All of these are two different entities. Now, some kind of way, it's not good government when you mix this money up. That's why they don't want to hear from the citizens. That's the very reason.
Thank you, Mr. Blakemore. Chairman Dowell will close up on this item. Actually, Alderman Dowell. Alderman Moore.
Yes, before Chairman Dow close out, only because, again, we have people always watching, and we just want to make sure that some information is clear. So as I asked before about the surplus, can someone talk about that, as Mr. Blakemore just mentioned, that the Park District money is deferred through the TIF as well, so that people can understand a correlation between the TIF dollars and the Park District?
Alderman, I think, I don't know if Ms. Riley can speak to those full set of numbers today, but we'll get that information.
Not the
on-
full set of numbers, just the process.
Oh, the
So
process.
just like anything else, when we do when we freeze for the TIF, the increment, that's taken out of the Park District as well, correct?
All taxing bodies,
All taxing bodies. So the Park Districts are impacted
yes.
by that, absolutely.
Yes.
So when we are using TIF money for that, that money would have gone to the Park District anyway, correct? A portion of
Yes.
that, absolutely. Thank you,
Because we are supported by the tax base.
absolutely. Thank you.
And we'll get all the taxing body information. I think it came out late in the budget session, but we'll dig that up from the budget department and bring it back out here. Alderman Dowell.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Waquespack, I am very proud of this project. It has been a long time, as Alderman Moore said, in the making. I want to make a few things clear. The TIF itself is 60% in the 3rd Ward and 40% in Alderman King's ward. And Alderman King and I have worked very closely to make sure that we can build park facilities in our respective communities. Alderman King has used Bronzeville TIF funds for the development of Ellis Park, and now we're using Bronzeville TIF funds for the development of the Dr. Daniel Hale Williams Park, which is nestled within Dearborn Homes CHA development and the Drake School campus. You know, before this building was built, the children there, over 600 young people who live in Dearborn Homes, and all of the children that go to Drake School, had to function within literally 1,000 square foot hut, which I called it, which made it very difficult for these young people to enjoy art classes or performances, and the Halloween and Christmas celebrations were off the chain because it was just so small for the young people to actually move around, not to mention the inability to participate in any indoor sports. So this facility was greatly needed. I'm very pleased with the architecture of this building because it is eye-catching as you drive past Dearborn Homes, and makes people know that that's a community of value. And to respond to a public comment that was made about this development, the general contractor was an African-American company. I'm very proud that we were able to achieve that as well. So I ask that my colleagues support this development, which is for the betterment of the youth of Dearborn Homes and the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Dowell. May I have a motion for approval on item number 3? Alderman O'Shea moves to pass. All in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion carries. Thank you both. Thank you, Alderman. Our next item is communications from the Department of Law. The monthly report of the judgment, verdict, and settlements from the Department of Law for the month of December will be placed on file with the clerk. Are there any questions on that document? If you want to take a look at it, we can also bring it back or go over it with the law department at a later date, but we're trying to get this information out to each one of you to understand, as we come up to budget this year, what the expenditures are from each one of these departments. Okay, before we have a motion to pass, we have Mr. George Blakemore to testify on this item. Oh, Alderman Thompson, before Mr. Blakemore starts.
So we had this last month as well. So this is cumulative, so this includes what was included last month, or is this in addition to?
This is just for the
For the month of January.
Oh, okay.
Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman. So For my colleagues' sake, the month of January settlements were over $2.2 million. Correct? $1.6 for judgments and settlements and almost $600,000 for legal fees, of which it looks like on page 2 of 2 of the second sheet, there's quite a bit that are police, well, actually the whole sheet is police settlements. Is that,
Yeah, that one is.
would it,
Alderman, that one is broken down for police.
is,
That's, yeah, and that's included in the 2.271 million.
so, okay, so then the 840, roughly $850,000 on the last page, that's all police settlements. Correct?
No, it's
Roughly?
592 is the fees and costs, and then 800 that you're referring to is, let's see.
No, because it says 500 and, or no. No, it's more than that. So is this, actually, Chairman, could we just have someone from the law department come before the end of the meeting to discuss this?
Sure, but may I offer a point of
Sure.
clarification? Sorry,
Sure,
Ann
Chairman.
Emerson, Committee on Finance. So I've been trying to get them to break these out department by department. The second page that you have here, those are just CPD. So that number, the 2.2, that's not in addition to the 2.6.
That's,
You'll see those same settlements in page 1 and the back of page 1. But yes, we'll absolutely have someone from law come down and discuss it.
Before the
end
close of this
for
meeting?
you. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman.
Irvin.
Alderman Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. This is the fees that we're spending are the fees for plaintiff's counsel in what you have broken out here. Is that correct?
Yeah, if you look at the, it's not all of them, but majority, if you look at Herber Law Firm, Lovey and Lovey, whatever their name is, Hamilton, Henderson Parks. For the most part, those are, but not all of them. But we'll have law department, if you have a specific question on
I
one.
just have one question for the outside counsel that we're using as defense counsel. Is it possible, well, I know it's possible, can we have a breakout of the fees that we're spending on defense counsel? Furthermore, I would like to see the racial breakout of those firms that we're using as defense counsel.
Point of information, Alderman Hairston.
Alderman Irvin, some of these firms are not defense firms. They are suing the city.
No, that I understand.
Okay,
That's
all
why I
right.
asked that question
So that
initially.
Lovey and Lovey sues the city.
Oh, no, yeah, I get that.
On behalf of the FOIA.
No, I'm
and
fine
so
with that. My concern is where we're spending our money, our deliberate expend. We can't prevent somebody from suing us, but we can definitely control how we spend to defend ourselves.
Well,
So my
and
question
we
is on the
can,
defense
for
side.
the FOIA actions, we can comply with FOIA and not get fees incurred as well.
That's true. That's a whole nother issue I wasn't going to jump on today, but since you opened that box, that's a...
The box is open.
that's something that very well should
That
be
is
discussed.
something that is
but-
within the city council's
Yeah,
control.
as I said, my concern in my initial question was how we're spending our money on the defense side and how diverse are we in our spend on the defense of the city in various actions. I've been thinking outside the box.
Alderman Smith.
Thank you very much. I just want to add my voices to the aldermen who are very concerned about how the city responds to FOIA. We just had a very difficult FOIA case in our ward of a woman who was litigating by herself to get certain information from the Department of Planning and Development. and really ran up against a brick wall with the city, and I didn't think that was appropriate. And I think that we should absolutely look in possibly amending or creating our own set of ordinances governing FOIA. And I'm sure I have others who I would agree with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Hairston.
No, you were right, and maybe your committee could look at it, because it is important. We cannot talk about transparency. We cannot talk about an open process unless we are following an open process. And right now, by prohibiting the access to information, we are not following that. And I don't think that that is our desire.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Alderman Smith.
yes, I'd be happy to work with my colleagues on such an ordinance and such a hearing. It is an important issue for us. Thank you.
Thank you both. So before I move on there, we want a breakdown of defense counsel, breakdown of their fees within the structure of all of the settlements, and the racial breakdown of those firms. Is that correct, Alderman Irvin? That's correct. All right, before we move on, we have one person to testify, Mr. Blakemore. George Blakemore.
As a concerned citizen, I asked for this breakdown too. It's not for you to have this backup material. You're supposed to share this with the citizens.
Mr. Blakemore, I can't hear you.
You're supposed to share this with the citizens. Part of your job is a teacher, an educator, and part of your job is to educate your constituents. That's one of the jobs of an alderman, to educate your constituent. If you got an informed, enlightened constituent, we will make progress. But if you got the material and you're not sharing it with your constituent, you're not doing your job.
Oh, yeah.
You're not doing your job. Now, all I received was those little 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, with the law department. I need more information. Your citizens need more information. Knowledge is power. When you have a group, you have the information, but the citizens, they don't know what's going on. You want to keep them dumb, uninformed, unenlightened, uneducated about government, where these schemes can continue to go on with the democratic machine. Trump is right here. We don't have to go to Washington, D.C. to see Trump. Trump is sitting right here. Right here. Because I just can't believe it when I come down. We have one citizen. That's a disgrace. And you treat me like a Georgia slave. Mimic me. Yeah. Turn your back on me. What you're telling me and other citizens is that you don't want us here. This is none of our business. We know how to handle the tax dollars. You don't. You don't. I'm so tired of people turning their back part to me. When you turn it to me, you're turning it to the citizens of our city. When you meet and greet. Who is Mr. Blakemore to tell me what to do? I am a citizen. And I have a right, this is a public meeting, and I have a right to speak. And you are supposed to play like you're listening. You're not supposed to be so arrogant and meet and greet with each other all the time. This is why Trump say, what's going on in Chicago? What's going on here? Big back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Blakemore. Item number 5 are 3 proposed orders authorizing applications for the City of Chicago charitable solicitation tag day permits. A is the Children's Home and Aid. B is for Clearbrook. C is for Mercy Home Boys and Girls. Item 6 is a proposed order authorizing the payment of various small claims against the City of Chicago. And number 7 is denial of payment of various small claims against the city. If there's no objection, I ask that these items be placed on the omnibus. No objection. We are moving on now to the supplemental agenda. We have 3 proposed orders authorizing the Corporation Council to enter into and execute a settlement order for the following cases: Etheridge versus the City of Chicago, Refugio Ruiz Cortez versus Glenn Llewellyn and the City of Chicago, Cruz Rodriguez and Aurora Rodriguez versus City of Chicago et al. We'll have Deputy Corporation Counsel Renee Rodney speak to each one of these settlements.
Good morning. My name is Renee Rodney, First Assistant Corporation Counsel. Thank you for allowing me to testify today. We have 3 proposed settlements for your consideration. The first proposed settlement resolves a lawsuit brought by Terrence T. Etheridge III, who was shot by a CPD officer during a pursuit and while he was carrying a gun. The plaintiff survived, but he is now a paraplegic. Plaintiff filed this lawsuit against 3 defendant officers in the City of Chicago, alleging Illinois state law claims of battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and civil conspiracy. We recommend that this matter be settled for $10 million, inclusive of fees and costs, to limit the city's financial exposure. On December 17, 2012, at approximately 10:56 in the morning, 2 CPD tactical officers in plain clothes were driving in an unmarked Crown Victoria police car. As the officers were patrolling the district, they noticed the plaintiff Etheridge walking down the street and acting suspiciously. According to the officers, Etheridge kept looking at the police car and was seen fidgeting with and holding his side. Based on these observations, the officer decided to perform a stop and call plaintiff over to their car. The plaintiff did not comply and he immediately fled on foot. One officer exited the vehicle and gave chase on foot while another remained in the car. According to the plaintiff, he was walking to get to his father's car to drive to his place of employment, Staples. Plaintiff further indicated that he did not know who these individuals were and that he ran after a man yelled to him to come here because he thought they were bad guys trying to get him. The officers chased plaintiff for more than 4 minutes as he jumped in and out of backyards in the area. During the chase, one officer saw plaintiff with a gun in his hand. The 2 officers reported their observations on the police radio, and one gave plaintiff multiple verbal commands to stop running and to drop the gun. Because of the radio transmissions, 3 additional officers arrived on the scene while one was still in his car, and they started to search the area. The key moment of the case occurred when 2 officers were both in an alleyway behind a garage of 1518 East 77th Street, and plaintiff was just beyond that same garage in the backyard of the house. One officer approached the northeast corner of the garage and another approached the northwest corner or side of the garage. According to the shooting officer, when the officer first saw the plaintiff in the backyard, he was in a quote-unquote combative position. His knees were bent, his weight was down, his upper body was slightly leaning forward, and his arms were tucked into his chest with a gun in his hand and pointed in the direction of the gangway that led to the northeast side of the garage. As the officer was slowing down near the entrance of the gangway from the northeast corner of the garage in the alley leading to the backyard of 1518 East 77th Street, the shooting officer, who was positioned on the northwest side of the garage, ordered plaintiff to drop the gun and get on the ground. At this time, plaintiff turned his head to look at the officer who told him to drop the gun, and they made eye contact. When this happened, the plaintiff still had his gun pointed in the direction of the northeast gangway. Plaintiff did not drop or move the gun, but instead kept his gun pointed in the same direction. When plaintiff turned and looked at the officer who told him to drop the gun, he did not move any other part of his body except his head. At that time, the shooting officer, who feared for his life and the life of the other officer who he believed was about to enter the gangway, which would have put him in line with the plaintiff's gun, fired his weapon 4 times. He struck plaintiff 1 time in the upper left back. He was 25 feet away from plaintiff when he fired the 4 shots. There was only a second or two between the officer's command to drop the gun and the firing of the weapon. Plaintiff testified that he was not aware that anyone was chasing him, nor did he hear anyone yelling at him as he ran. The first time he heard someone was when he reached the backyard of 1518 East 77th Street. It was there that he heard someone from behind him say, "Police, put your hands up." Plaintiff said he never turned around to look at this individual. Plaintiff was standing in the grass when the officer said, "Drop the gun." Plaintiff stated that he put his hands up in the air, no gun in hand, and attempted to get on the ground, one knee at a time, when he heard shots fired. He fell to the ground as he was shot in the left side of his back. Plaintiff admits he had a gun because it was a bad neighborhood and his friend had given it to him the night before for protection. He said that throughout the chase, the gun remained in his jacket pocket, and it was still in his pocket when he was shot. After the shooting, he was transported from the scene in an ambulance to Stroger Hospital, where he remained until March 2013. This case carries numerous liability risks. The biggest risk is that the jury will find that under the shooting officer's own account of the incident, he was not reasonable in believing that there is an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to himself or to his fellow officer at the time he shot plaintiff. The plaintiff will focus on the fact that the only thing that prompted the officer to shoot him was the plaintiff looking at the officer after he yelled at him to drop the gun and to get to the ground. At no time did plaintiff point his gun at the officer or turn any part of his body other than his head towards him. Additionally, the officer gave plaintiff only 2 seconds to comply with his command, arguably not enough time to comply. Finally, plaintiff did not turn any part of his body other than his head in the direction of the officer, again potentially showing a lack of imminency. Additionally, the officer's rationale is that he not only shot in defense of his life, but also his fellow officers because he thought he was going to enter the gangway where plaintiff was pointing his gun. In fact, that officer, who was on the other side of the garage, stated in his IPRA statement that he would not have blindly rushed down the gangway because he knew plaintiff was there and he did not want to be ambushed. Therefore, a jury could conclude that there was no imminent threat. Under both the officer's and plaintiff's accounts, plaintiff never pointed a gun at anyone. Under plaintiff's version of events, he claims he did not have a gun in his hand at the moment he was shot. An eyewitness who resided in the home at 1518 East 77th Street testified that he was woken up by gunshots. He unequivocally testifies that he did not see the shooting. He does, however, say that he looked out of the window right after the shooting. It did not see a gun by plaintiff's body. Additionally, one of the responding officers testified that while he was positioned 3 backyards away from plaintiff at the time of the shooting, he could see plaintiff and that he did not see a gun in his hand. He also testified that the plaintiff did not have his hands in the air, per plaintiff's account. Plaintiff's damages and the likelihood of a jury finding him sympathetic are extremely high. Following the date of the incident, plaintiff underwent several life-saving surgeries and he became a paraplegic. Plaintiff will need daily care for the rest of his life. Overall, plaintiff's medical rehabilitation expert has valued the level of future medical care, an accessible vehicle, an accessible home, and supplies to range from $24 million to over $27 million. Additionally, plaintiff has an expert that will opine that plaintiff, even given his current health, has a normal life expectancy, which is 77 years old. Finally, plaintiff has not been employed since the incident. Given the severity of plaintiff's injuries and the issues noted herein with the liability, including future health care costs, this case should settle for $10 million. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Hopkins?
What is the extent of the existing video recording this incident?
There is no video of the incident. It occurred in 2012, which was pre the requirement of body-worn cameras.
Any pod camera video showing the events leading up to the incident?
No.
So no video at all. So we're relying on the testimony of the involved parties and the witnesses.
That's correct.
And the presence of the gun is beyond dispute. There was a gun that the offender had either in his possession or in his pocket or in his hand. That's a matter of dispute.
That is not disputed.
Okay.
That he had a gun, yes.
All right, so not knowing the specifics of the situation, other than that this was an armed confrontation between a law enforcement officer and an offender. I would just point out, again, not saying that this specifically what happened here, the length of time it can potentially take someone holding a gun to turn around and fire that gun is actually measured in tenths of a second, less than a second. That's how quick it can happen. So again, not implying that that's what happened here. We don't know. We have conflicting accounts. But the presence of a gun in this armed confrontation with police, I think suggests that the validity of their fear is valid, that there's reason to fear for your life anytime you're a police officer and you're confronted with an armed offender who is not complying with your request to drop the weapon. I will support this settlement, though. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hopkins. Any, Alderman Napolitano?
Thank you, Chairman. Just two quick questions. Did the person that was shot in this incident have an FOID card?
No, he did not. He was prosecuted for unlawful possession of a firearm, to which he pleaded guilty and received a term of probation.
Okay, and this was also prior to concealed carry as well, correct?
Yes, December 2012.
Okay. Kind of to reiterate on what my colleague said as well, from the time the incident occurred to the time the person was shot was approximately how long?
Well, the time between when the command was given to drop the gun was approximately 2 seconds before the officer fired his weapon.
No, from the beginning of the incident.
When he was spotted in the alley,
Yeah.
the foot chase lasted approximately 4 minutes through several backyards.
Okay, so 4 minutes to throw a gun. You could have tossed a gun in 4 minutes. And never threw the gun. It was on his possession when the shots occurred, correct?
Yes.
Those are the only questions I have. I'll be a no on this.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Moore?
Thank you, Chairman. Just in terms of some of the dialogue and making sure I understand what you're saying, when we talk about armed confrontation, as it was talked about, that's alleged, right? When we talk about an armed confrontation, is that alleged or is that a fact?
It's undisputed that Mr. Etheridge was carrying a gun on him during the pursuit and when confronted in the backyard.
Okay.
Mr. Etheridge says the gun was in his pocket the entire time. The shooting officer said that he was holding the gun and facing the direction of the other side of the garage where his partner was potentially going to walk down.
And I think in our briefing, it wasn't another officer said that wasn't there conflicting testimonies by the officers. Can you state those conflicting testimonies again?
Yes, there is yet another responding officer who was approximately 3 backyard lengths away, who said that he saw Mr. Etheridge in the backyard, but he did not see anything in his hands.
Okay, and again, what led up to, I think something was talked about, he explained why he had a gun?
According to Mr. Etheridge, his friend had given him the gun the night before for protection.
Protection from what? It was never stated?
Mr. Etheridge, by his own description, said that he was in a bad neighborhood.
Okay, all right. And you said the witness, so I can be clear, the witness who looked out the window, which was in the next yard over, correct?
The witness who looked out of the window lived in the house.
Oh, lived
with the
actually
backyard.
in the house.
He did not see the shooting. When he looked out of the window, he saw Mr. Etheridge, but he says he did not see any gun by him.
By him. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderman Moore. Alderman Taliaferro?
Thank you, Chairman. And Chairman, I just have a comment and perhaps a question as well for the council. In our quest, or my continued quest, to see if we could be presented with unbiased presentment of each case, I was wondering if your office can, during our briefings of these cases, provide us with the officer's complimentary as well as disciplinary history, and also if there are any sustained cases of Rule 14 violations against the officers, which are essentially filing false police reports or giving false testimony with regard to any any case in which they're under oath. So if we could start getting these with regard to our police briefings, I certainly appreciate it. And for the council, do we have any negative disciplinary history and complimentary history with regard to these officers that are being charged here, or not necessarily charged, but are part of the suit as defendants? And are there any Rule 14 violations with regard to any of those officers?
Yes. For the 3 defendant officers, there are a total of 48 complaints. For the shooting officer, none of his complaints were sustained. For the officer who was on the other side of the garage, he had 3 sustained complaints. One was for a prisoner escape following an arrest, for which he received a 1-day suspension. The other 2 were regarding a lack of attention to duty, failure to attend to prisoner injury, and failure to perform a vehicle search, which resulted in a 1-day total suspension for both of those incidents. And then the 3rd officer, who was named as a defendant, did not have any sustained complaints. I also have their commendations, if you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, I would.
The shooting officer had a total of 89 commendations. The 2nd defendant officer has a total of 104 commendations. And the 3rd defendant officer has a total of 80 commendations.
Point of information, Alderman Napolitano.
Commendations? Yes.
80 of them, or?
According to the information that I have, 80, of which 65 were honorable mentions.
Okay.
And then
That's what I was
others
trying
for
to say.
various awards.
But, okay, thank you.
Of the complaints, were any of them in violation of Rule 14?
No.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Alderman Moore.
I'm sorry, Chairman, just a couple of questions for the record. I know I asked off the record. Were there any fingerprints found on the gun?
There were no suitable prints found for analysis on the weapon.
And did this young man have any priors?
No prior convictions.
And was he working and in school or just working?
He was working at the Staples office supply store.
Okay. And that's it? He just had a job?
Yes.
Good job. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Alderman Sposato, before you go, I just want to mention that for these briefings, we are providing the disciplinarian commendatory reports as well as Rule 14 violations. We are also bringing in COPA, CPD, and the Chief Risk Officer to these briefings. So if you have questions about those, we can answer them there, but welcome to answer here as well. Alderman Sposato.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Rodney. Appreciate it. Since you've been doing this, there seems to be a lot more people attending, so you must be doing something right, so I appreciate you. Just one question. Somebody asked about fingerprints. Fingerprints aren't an issue in this, though, are they? He didn't deny that was his gun, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just wanted a point of clarification on that. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman. Before we move to a vote, we have one person wishing to speak, Mr. George Blakemore.
My question to you, young lady, what was the race of these officers, and what was the race of the person that was shot? I look. Say I can't read, right? Spell anything. I can see. And this is very important to know the demographic, the race of the officers and the one who got shot. Seemed like these officers overreacted. And when you see these settlements for $10 million, you know whose money? This is the taxpayers' money. The taxpayers' money. These officers have a difficult job. We have social engineering in Chicago, from Head Start, 4 years old, to the criminal justice system. put on drugs as little kids in special education. No jobs, no economic development. Our children are just not born inferior. The system is a part of the problem. Incarceration. So when you hear all that shooting in the black community or black on black crime, it's programmed miseducation of the black man. In the schools, the little boy is so bad, and they target the black male. Have the mothers to sign him up for a special class. Then give him medication. Then incarceration. Then extermination. Things just don't happen. They just do not happen. They're programmed. It's just not happening that they have no public speakers here today. You all get around and talk to each other. That can be lobbying. Y'all could be lobbying on this floor. Things don't happen. It's a reason why our youth are like they are. From the black family values also. It's a combination of reasons. And we all are a part of this problem. All of us. Again, I want to know the race of the young man who was shot and the race of the shooter. May God bless.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to pass on item A? Alderman Tunney moves to pass. Okay, we'll have a roll call. We're going to do a roll call.
Alderman Silverstein. Alderman Osterman. Alderman Tunney. Alderman Smith. Alderman Riley. Alderman Napolitano. Alderman Spizzato. Alderman Mitz. Alderman Villegas. Alderman Austin. Alderman Raboiras. Alderman Taliaferro. Alderman Irvin. Alderman Burnett. Alderman Scott. Alderman Tabarez. Alderman Brookins. Alderman O'Shea. Alderman Curtis. Alderman Moore. Alderman Lopez. Alderman Burke. Alderman Quinn. Alderman Cardenas. Alderman Thompson. Alderman Garza. Alderman Beal. Alderman Harris. Alderman Mitchell. Alderman Sawyer. Alderman King. Alderman Dowell. Alderman Hopkins.
Alderman Waquespack votes aye. Alderman Mitz votes aye.
Alderman Mitz is an aye. One.
Alderman Tabarez votes aye.
Aye. Alderman Tabarez is an aye.
Alderman Silverstein? Aye.
Alderman Silverstein's an aye. There being 20 ayes and 7 noes.
The item passes. Item B is Refugio Reese Cortez versus Glenn Llewellyn in the city of Chicago, and we'll do a summary on that item as well. Item B.
Thank you. This second proposed settlement ends a lawsuit brought by plaintiff Refugio Ruiz Cortez, who was convicted of federal narcotics offenses and sentenced to 17 years in prison. Approximately 11 years into his sentence, his conviction was vacated because federal prosecutors determined that the evidence was largely supported by the unreliable testimony of a retired CPD officer. After the plaintiff was released, he sued the officer and another fellow CPD officer, alleging fabrication of evidence and suppression of material evidence and malicious prosecution under Illinois law. The Department of Law recommends a settlement in the amount of $400,000, inclusive of all attorney's fees and costs. Are there any questions?
Before we move to a vote, we have one person signed up to speak, Mr. George Blakemore.
This is a tragedy. All those years locked up in that cage and found out that a Chicago police lied. Those years cannot come back. The young man has a mental problem. Just locked up in this cage, these cages, that particular one. The gentleman needs support. And a lie. You know, these judges and these juries, Lady Justice can see. She's not blind. She peeps. And she sees poverty, poor. She sees color. And then she sees money too. Old Lady Justice peeps. And she looks. What is the race of that person? Was it a young white boy? Was it an Asian boy? Was it a black young man? She watches. She's not blind. She peeps. She knows. So this is, the first one was a tragic. With the 10 million, the young man can't do anything in life. And then this second one was a tragic. He might can walk around, but this was 17 years stolen from his life. So he's due way more than $400,000. Yes, he is. So the lawyer gonna get everybody. We, society, you have to take some of the responsibility. We got to take some of the responsibility. So if our policemen are rogue and doing something wrong, you got to take responsibility of that too. They have problems. We have problems. Let's not put it on the police department. We as a nation, as a people, we have problems. We are violent. We're not loving. And perhaps this experiment has not been perfected, what they call democracy. We're working on that experiment. We have not mastered that experiment. We are not all equal
Thank you,
under
Mr.
that
Blakemore.
experiment.
May I have a motion for approval on item B? So moved by Alderman Dowell. All in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the motion carries. Our final item is item C, Rodriguez versus City of Chicago et al.
Thank you. This third and last proposed settlement resolves a lawsuit brought by Cruz Rodriguez and Araya Rodriguez, who were alleged to have been injured in the early morning hours of June 1st, 2014, when CPD officers reported to a residence in response to reports of fighting in the front yard. The defendant officers kicked the door, yelled at the female plaintiff, and ultimately made entry to the apartment, allegedly knocking the female plaintiff to the side and causing her injuries. While in the apartment, excuse me, a brawl ensued where the male plaintiff sustained multiple cuts and bruising and a significant back injury. The plaintiff's lawsuit against the individual officers in the city followed. The law department recommends settling this case for $270,000, inclusive of attorney's fees and costs. I'm happy to take any questions.
Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Chairman. So your testimony is that officers arrived and a brawl ensued. Wasn't one of the officers struck in the face by one of the individuals? And that's what started this situation?
When the officers first arrived to the scene outside, The plaintiff's son, who was not a party to this lawsuit, was alleged to have thrown a punch at the officer through the fence.
Were there other officers who said that he was punched?
Yes.
So the
then-
officers were called to a scene, punched in the face, and then this situation escalated from there.
Right. So
Where did
they
the son go?
At the time of the incident, where did the
Yes.
son go? The son ran inside of the plaintiff's home.
And that's where the police officers burst into the house.
The officers jumped the fence, called for assistance, more officers arrived.
So-
Then they proceeded to kick on the door, bang on the door in an attempt to get inside.
In pursuit of someone who had just assaulted a police officer. Okay, the reason I'm making this, and I think this question, and I think it goes to what Chairman Taliaferro was talking about, is that, you know, the description, if not in its totality, comes off as very biased towards settling, as though the police officers just randomly, that were there and just randomly entered into this building. And I think that this entire situation would not have escalated to this point if someone had not thrown a punch at an officer. Understanding this is a party, understanding people are intoxicated, understanding all of that, there's never an excuse to swing at an officer. And for us to once again be asked to reward bad behavior is not something I'm comfortable with. And I would actually encourage Chairman, to you and possibly even Chairman Taliaferro, that these lawsuits actually be a joint venture moving forward so that we can ensure that it is as even-keeled as possible moving forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions? Alderman Sposato?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Rodney. Again, just a point of clarification, Alderman Lopez, it wasn't really a punch. We saw the video. It was more like a shove to the face, kind of, so I want to make it perfectly clear, even though I don't support this, but it wasn't him just rearing back and cold cocking the police officer. It was more like an intense moment, a lot of yelling and screaming, and he clearly went after the police officer and kind of gave him a shove towards the face. So that's just my point of clarification. If Ms. Rodney wanted to clarify it better, I have no problem with it, but thank you, Ms. Rodney and Chairman. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alderman Sposato. Before we vote, we have Mr. George Blakemore to speak on this item.
We, as a city, must train our police officers. If the police officer is doing something unethical, unprofessional, it's because we failed to have trained the police officers. Right now, Chicago is under a consent decree. They've had them all over the country, and nothing changes. You know, I begin to be very negative. Somebody say, Mr. Blakemore, you're very negative. I begin to think that we will not overcome. We will overcome only when we change right up here, our mind. Otherwise, we can sing, dance, have all kind of meetings. I'm talking about black people now. This is still Black History Month. It won't be any economic development. There will be no social equity if we waiting on government to do that. We have to do it ourselves. You go to Black Wall Street, it's not there anymore. It'll never be there again. These ghettos will never change if you down here are going to make them change. We as people, we have to make them change. We have to make them change. Economic development. It's not going to happen. Social equity. It's not going to happen. Things just don't happen because government want them to happen. People, we have to make them change. And I don't think we're going to ever, I'm too negative. But you never get your or reparation. You'll never have it. You'll never be, they're ahead, they already done got that marijuana. And then that lady say, now we're going to have, the blacks going to get something too. I don't think so. They didn't get nothing on the first round. Why do you think the maps have changed to give you something on the second round? Beep, 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 beep. Am I negative? Am I lying? Make me out of a lie. Let me see economic development. Let me see a lot of black people selling marijuana, making millions of dollars. That's wishful thinking. One day we will overcome when we see that we make it overcome. And black history, you're going to
Thank you, Mr. Blakemore. Before we, actually, let's, can I have a motion to pass on that item? Alderman Harris moves to pass. Okay, we'll have the ayes first. All those in favor of the motion, roll call? Okay. Well, I just said I'd like to be recorded as voting no. That's not necessarily. I got you, though. Roll call.
Alderman Harrison. Alderman Silverstein. Alderman Osterman. Alderman Tunney. Alderman Smith. Alderman Riley. Alderman Napolitano. Alderman Sposato. Alderman Metz. Alderman Villegas. Alderman Austin. Alderman Raboiras. Alderman Taliaferro. Alderman Irvin. Alderman Burnett. Alderman Scott. Alderman Tavares. Alderman Brookins. Alderman O'Shea. Alderman Curtis. Alderman Moore. Alderman Lopez. Alderman Burke. Alderman Quinn. Alderman Cardenas. Alderman Thompson. Alderman Garza. Alderman Beal. Alderman Harris. Alderman Mitchell. Alderman Sawyer. Alderman King. Alderman Dowell. Alderman Hopkins. Alderman Waquespack.
Aye.
Alderman Hairston.
Did anybody come in late? That
There being 14 ayes and 11 noes.
motion passes. Okay, before we adjourn, we have one other item that we wanted to go back to, on item number 4 with the cases that would be placed on file with the clerk. If you look back at the judgments and settlements report, there was a question about whether CPD judgments and payment amounts were included, and Deputy Corporation Counsel can answer that question.
So the spreadsheet marked January 2020 includes all judgments and settlements paid out for all city departments. The second spreadsheet carves out settlements paid out for CPD. So that total of $2.271475 for CPD is part of the total settlements paid out in January of $2.605126.
Are there any other questions? Alderman Lopez.
Thank you again, Chairman. I have a question as it relates to the settlements here and the settlements from last month. According to our Rule 45 report, the lawsuit connected with Kelly Hespy,
Yes,
that was approved by this committee, correct?
yes,
It was approved for $300,000, correct?
that's correct.
Why is it listed in this report as having settled then for $145,000?
I'll need to double check, but I think that speaks to the payment to the plaintiff. What also needs to be part of that is the portion of that $300,000 that went to her attorney's fees.
Why would it be in this report if this is this including settlements and judgments that we vote on as well?
Yes.
So then we're saying that she had $155,000 went to attorney's fees and $145,000 went to her?
That's my estimation. I don't have the settlement in front of me, but I can confirm that, and we can update this chart to the extent that was inadvertently left off.
So then my next question would be, for all of these other lawsuits where the fees and costs are zero, do we know that that in fact is the case, that they are zeros? Because obviously we know that there were fees and costs associated with this lawsuit. And I just want to make sure that we don't have to call into question the validity of the numbers that were being presented. So I'd like to have faith that these are the true and accurate numbers when we get them.
Certainly, we'll confirm that and make sure it's accurate.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to, on that point, or to clarify, Renee, if we can, so the fees and costs are when we pay attorney's fees on top of settlements. The other ones are presumed that the attorney's fees are part of that settlement amount? Or is the fees are defense fees?
The fees pertain to plaintiff's counsel's fees.
Okay, so in this case, it would just be potentially a Scrivener's error. If we approved a $300,000 settlement, it shows $145 for Ms. Hespy. So in the fee and cost line, it should say 155, roughly 155,000. So it would be a Scrivener error potentially.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that's it right there. Yeah, Alderman Thompson, I think what we'll do is get clarification, but if I'm not mistaken, I think on the Hespy case, Mr. Herber from Herber Law Firm was actually the plaintiff's attorney on that case, and if you look just above that at the Herber Law Firm, it's $154,429, which if you add in the $145,571 equals $300,000. So I think they do actually have it under the fees and costs. It's about three rows up there for discrimination of gender, but we can double check on that just to make sure. But that would equal $300,000, and I'm pretty sure that Mr. Herber from our briefings and the settlement discussion was the plaintiff's attorney. Alderman Taliaferro.
Actually,
But
Chairman, I think you may have answered my question. I was concerned about the Herber Law Firm as plaintiffs in a discrimination suit.
Yeah.
I was wondering what was the basis of a discrimination suit with the law firm. But I think you somewhat answered. Those were attorney fees?
Most likely, yes. I'd like to get confirmation, but that's what it looks like.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, Deputy Corporation Counsel will confirm that. Alderman Smith, did you have, and Alderman Riley?
Yeah, first of all, that was very thankful. I'm very thankful for that correction. So these fees and costs that are listed here, these are checks that are cut, is what I'm gathering. All right,
Yes.
so this is not the city's attorney's fees.
That's correct. Our outside counsel fees are not part of this listing.
Okay. And if we just did something in-house, of course, that wouldn't show either. All right. I misunderstood that. So these are just plaintiff's fees that come about when you, and this report is literally out of the payment database showing actual checks that were cut during this month.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And Alderman Smith, we'll be getting, requesting the breakdown of fees for the defendant's counsel if there was outside counsel, and then Alderman Irvin requested the racial breakdown of those fees, firms as well.
Thank you. That's excellent transparency, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Riley?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a suggestion that might be helpful to avoid future confusion. If you have two different fees associated with the same case, mark it as such so that people can do that quick math for themselves. Just a suggestion.
Will do. Thank you, Alderman Riley. There being no further questions, this concludes the agenda of the Committee on Finance. May I have a motion to adjourn? Alderman Tunney has a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.